Hi.
Hello.
Hey.
How are you both?
Oh, super duper. Do we have anybody joining us?
I don't know yet. We just literally started. It's one of those things where it's like, hey, it's 7 o'clock. Let's see who's joining us. Showing a few viewers. Nothing huge, but a few viewers. But we can go ahead and get started because who doesn't have questions for their legislators? Right? And you are both my legislators.
And who doesn't have a question for our PSC commissioner to be?
Oh, we have lots of those. So, who wants to start? Who wants to be asked the first question? Because we don't have anybody here, but when they do chat in, when anybody comes in, they can chat through any of the systems where we've got everything live. I just checked all of mine, and it looks like everything is working okay, as expected. So people should be able to type messages to us, and we can read them, and then we can show who asked the question and answer them as well.
So cool. I'm super excited about this process, Kev. This is going to be fun, and I think this is something we should do all the way through our campaign season.
Well, I'm hoping so too, because one of the things that we've had a problem with, especially because of the pandemic, is, of course, outreach. Like, we can knock on doors, but there's nothing more exciting in the world than a 6 foot tall, 350-pound angry man coming up and knocking on your door going, who are you voting for? So I'm terrified when I do it. Mary Ann is the most excited person I've ever met on the doors.
Oh yeah,
did you just move your mic? What just happened?
I don't know who did that.
It's yesterday I talked to a woman who swears, I mean, she's a true believer in election fraud, this alleged quote election fraud, and she says, I have proof that those machines. I said, well, they're not connected to the internet. No, I have proof that those machines are hacked. I said, they're not connected to the internet. Well, I don't care. You talk to Teresa Manzella. She'll tell you.
Yeah.
I'm not going to take advice from the horse girl who supports killing horses. Like, I'm just not going to do it. Thanks.
And is super mean to our LGBTQ folks. And she doesn't care about anybody that doesn't look like her and act like her and go to her church. So
right. And on Wednesdays, they wear pink. Yes. She won't get that reference because she's not cultured. So anyway.
So why don't we talk about maybe why we're running? You want to do that?
You want to start?
Yeah.
Why are you running, Jill Cohenour?
So because I think the House of Representatives could use a little bit of experience. I mean, it's a place where there's a lot of turnover. And I think that it would be good to have somebody in there that's got relationships with the folks over in the Senate, which is always super helpful. And I've worked a lot with the Republican leadership over in the Senate, which I think will be really, really helpful as we move forward into this next session. We were able to get some things done during the last session by really playing on those relationships, working with our colleagues, using our ability to talk with one another to be able to work out some of the issues in this session. And right to work is the first and foremost thing that we were able to kill in this last session. And it was due to the fact that we had relationships. And then we brought to bear the pressure from our partnership groups, like all of those in labor that came to that building and embarrassed the crap out of them and made them run the gauntlet with all of those people with their hard hats on and there's nurses. And it was awesome. But it was really about those relationships and that ability to talk to one another and find some common ground on it. And I'm looking forward to working on some of those labor issues during this next session. The public employees definitely need raises. We have watched the fact that they're leaving in droves because they can get higher wages working in the private sector. And so those critical human services kinds of support that comes from government, and we all believe that government is there as a support system, they're going away. And our ability to support family success in their own communities is going away because we're losing a lot of public employees. And so I'm super worried about the fact that those critical services aren't going to be there for families and kids and all of those folks that live across Montana for them to be successful in their own communities. And so I believe that I've got a lot more work to do, and I want to go back and do it.
So I have a question for you along with that. So you're running for the House now. You were in the Senate. Were you in the House before then?
I was. So I was in the House from 2003, 5, 7, and 9. And then I was out for 13, for 11 and 13, and then back in 15. And I did my 8 years in the House, out for 4, back in the Senate for 8. And then I'll be able to go back to the House again because you can do 8 in any 16.
Ah, nice.
Yeah.
That's
So
cool.
Jill,
Well, that means that we get some institutional knowledge back, which is such a great thing to have because a lot of that did go out the door when we passed term limits.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, oh, this sounds like a good idea, and then we take out the shotgun and blow off our toes. Oh, that wasn't what we meant. Darn.
Wow,
So,
what an
Marianne,
analogy.
you've been in the House now for 8 years, correct?
Pardon?
What?
Marianne, you've been in the House now for 8 years?
Oh, yeah, but we're not done with Jill. Jill.
Okay.
Okay. Do you want to? Okay. I just wanted to ask Jill. So you've worked your way and become the minority leader of the Senate. Wish it had been majority leader, but oh well. Next session. So you're going to bring all that experience in leadership with you to the House, and that's another reason, term limits is such a bad idea. If you couldn't do that. I mean, they passed term limits, but they forgot about this one little. I don't want to call it a loophole, but it's like a good oops that you can serve eight years in one house. And then, you have to be done in that one chamber, but then you can go to the other chamber and you can go back again after 8 years. So I'm glad you're doing that because we can't give up.
Yes, we've got a lot of work to do. The only other thing that I would mention to folks is I hope that everybody who is a hunter and cares about the outdoors in Montana and wants to be able to access our public places in the state of Montana will also vote that in this session. There's a lot of Montanans that vote their guns. Well, right now you better be voting your outdoor heritage and your ability to access the public places in Montana, because that was a huge attack in this last session. And they are handing our wildlife heritage to wealthy out-of-state folks, and they don't really care about the everyday do-it-yourself hunter that's on the ground in the state of Montana. And I'm really scared about the next level that they will do to the state. And I just really hope that people will bring that forward when they go to vote and know who stuck up for them during this last session and who the hell won't.
Yeah.
Right. Ditto. Everything you said, ditto. And, Montana hunters who hunt ethically, right?
Yes, as opposed to people who, I don't know, get in a helicopter and fly somewhere and shoot a cat in a tree.
That's been held there, trained for 2
Or
hours.
you go shoot the wolf that's been in a trap for hours waiting for you to get there. That's
Right.
so nice.
Yeah, let's torture animals before we kill them.
Okay, Marianne, why are you?
Okay, so I've been in the House since 2015, 7.5 years now, and I'm termed out end of December. And after last session that was so horrible and so full of bullying and harassment, especially for women Democratic legislators, people say, why do you want to go back there? Why do you want to continue fighting? Well, simply because one thing, I'm a fighter, but secondly, I'm not going to throw in the towel and let the bullies win. I mean, we need to keep every single Democratic seat that we have. We can't lose any, and it would be wonderful if we could gain some. Republicans, everybody's probably heard this already, just need 2 more seats in order to be a super majority, and they can do super awful, dangerous things like dismantling our Montana Constitution, passing a legislative referendum to put it on the ballot, and then they'll just lie about how, like Representative Ski said, it's a socialist rag that has like 12 wonderful protections for Montanans, like the right to know, the right to dignity, the right to privacy, the right to a clean and healthful environment in the midst of a climate crisis. So many rights, and folks worked in 1972 to get that done across the aisle. They sat side by side. They didn't know if their neighbor was a Republican or Democrat. And we need to honor and keep that Montana Constitution and celebrate it. It's 50 years old this year. So I'm not going to throw in the towel and give up. We need to keep persevering. And somebody needs to be the loyal opposition up there when they introduce and pass their horrendous, awful bills, taking away all kinds of rights, taking away public health rights, taking away transgender rights, taking away, you name it. And of course, these are the people who declare freedom to stomp on other people, frankly. So, I got into politics in 2015 to get Medicaid expansion passed, and we did that with a little bit of a fight, and then we reauthorized it in 2019 with even more of a fight. There's still so much to do for affordable health care and mental health care. And for the people who care for our loved ones that we can't care for direct care providers in mental health, in disability services, in aging services. We need to make sure we pay them a living wage. That's been another one of my priorities in the 7.5 years I've served, is a living wage, and we're chipping away at that little by little. So still so much to do. I hear on the doors now, of course, the big hot button topic is affordable housing, affordable and workforce housing. I think maybe that's the top thing that our legislature needs to work together and come up with a comprehensive, multi-pronged approach to affordable housing, because young people can't afford an apartment, let alone to buy a starter home, because starter homes are $400,000. We just need to approach it from the zoning, from land planning, from tax incentives, from tax credits. We just need to all hands on deck and really genuinely approach this and not throw in politics that will derail any good ideas. So yeah.
Agreed.
We've got a question actually from Sean White Wolf, so I'm going to throw that up on the screen. The question is, has the splat tax proposal gone any further? And he's specifically referring to the property tax initiative.
CI 121.
Oh,
121.
yeah.
It's 121 bad ideas all in a sack. Who wants to take it first?
So, Sean, they are actually, it is in the signature gathering phase because the judge has allowed for signature gathering to continue even as there are still some questions about the initiative itself. So I believe that it's out there somewhere. I haven't seen anybody doing it, but my understanding is that there's people that are downloading stuff from the internet and maybe having their neighbors sign in. So it is very concerning. It's a very bad idea. We are not California. I will say that again. Montana is not California, and we never want to be California. And this is essentially Proposition 13 from California that completely dismantled the funding for schools and local governments. Property tax funds local governments in the state of Montana. And most of that is folks voting for increasing their own taxes to pay for fire, to pay for police officers, to pay for school funding, and the things that kids need. This is what is so scary about CI 121, because it not only is it going to cap the taxes back at 2019, so that's an immediate cut to schools in the state of Montana. But then it goes on to have these capping types of things. So here's your next little twist for CI 121. The city of Missoula is the only one that will be capped because of the 1%, which it only allows for taxes to go up 1% of your total market value. So in Missoula, they will already be capped. So let's say we have a fire district that goes outside of the city limits and into the county. The city of Helena will get to vote yes on that, and their taxes will not go up, and the taxes out in the rural area will go up. So this is how this thing is going to function over the long haul. It's actually going to shift taxes to the people that are probably least likely to be able to pay them, and the people who are going to get the tax breaks are Bozeman. So I want to let people know they do not want to sign this thing. We are working really hard in the Revenue Interim Committee to come up with an alternative, which is going to actually help the people that it needs to help. We have talked in a bipartisan manner about doing a circuit breaker, which essentially looks at your ability to pay along with your tax burden. And it would basically affect most of the people that we want to keep in their homes that are having trouble paying their increased taxes. The other fun thing about the initiative, your taxes can't go down any faster than 2%. Yeah, that's a little twist that got added to it because they found out that there was a Supreme Court finding that basically said that you couldn't have those two things different, your taxes going up and going down. So they had to put a limit on the taxes going down. And if you know anything about what the market has just done, your taxes can't go down. And right now, if your taxes go down, they go down immediately. Yeah. So this is a bad initiative.
I'd like to add something to this because I've worked with the Montana Tax Appeal Board for a couple of years, and it has been super interesting to find out how property taxes work. But one of the most interesting things is that we have in all 56 counties, county tax appeal boards. So if you disagree with what you got for an assessment from the Department of Revenue, you can fill out a Form AB 26 and dispute it, and that's directly with the Department of Revenue. And if they don't give you an answer that you like, which they might not, you then can appeal to the County Tax Appeal Board. And if they don't help you, you can appeal to the State Tax Appeal Board. And it is a super interesting process. God, I'm a nerd. But it is a super interesting process where you can literally go and say, hey, you're not looking at my property correctly. Yes, I understand there are things nearby that probably changed in significant ways, but I shouldn't be damaged by them in this tax cycle. And the Tax Appeal Board and the State Tax Appeal Board they're other Montanans. I mean, the County Tax Appeal Board are definitely other Montanans. They're your neighbors in your county. And you will find that you will get fair treatment if you simply ask for it. So that's one of the things that people should know is that the County Tax Appeal Board, the State Tax Appeal Board are there to help you in those situations so that you don't have this happen. So keep an eye out for those when you get a ruling from the Department of Revenue that you have concerns with or that you think is unfair. Because ultimately, the state doesn't want to tax anybody out of their home. That's never the goal. But the state needs revenue in order to be able to do all the things. So let's make sure that it's done fairly, and this is the way to do it. So there's lots in this. This initiative is terrible. It should be thrown out.
Yeah,
and there's no baby. It's only bathwater.
It absolutely is. And somebody who's worked with the Department of Revenue, I can tell you, before you even go to the Tax Appeal Board, just call us up and talk to us and say, hey, can you redo this? Can you come out and talk to us? And they're happy to do that. They're happy to do that. They are the good guys. We have a question. What are the Democrats doing to come up with a fair tax plan?
I was just going to put that up.
Well, you know what? Every single session, Jill and I, both of us, have been on the tax committee every single session. And every single session, Democrats, I was one of them, introduced property tax abatement, property tax reduction bills. And guess who never voted them out of committee? I had one that was a really wonky one that taxed what's called centralized assessments, big corporations. Big corporations for things like pipelines and railroads and things that cross county lines, big stuff. They get a tax break on the value of that. We, as residential property taxpayers, don't get a tax break on if we live next to a lake or some amenity, a park, for the value of that. But big corporations get a huge tax break on when their property is what we call the valuation valued or appraised. That comes off what they pay in their property taxes. So big corporations are getting a tax break. I wanted to do away with that and make it equitable across all classes of property taxes. We have 17 classes of property taxes, and that's really wonky, but residential and small commercial are class 4. Another thing about C-121, you cut the property taxes on residential. It's like a waterbed. If you want to keep the same amount of revenue to pay for police and fire, and I can tell you, we've had a couple of fires lately. We had one in East Helena just the other night, that somebody's going to have to pay that difference, and it's going to be small businesses and small farmers and other taxpayers. So there are democratic ways. Former Senator Dick Barrett, an economist, an economics professor at UM, I believe, or retired at least, but he had this wonderful circuit breaker, and it's basically income based. It skews up or down with income levels. So the wealthy don't always get away with the biggest tax breaks. We just want to put some fairness in there. And we'll see our property taxes leveling out. And so don't believe them when they say the Democrats never gave us any ideas, because we were the ones that go look it up that introduced those bills.
And Linda, I'll let you know that it's a bipartisan effort in that Revenue Interim Committee, and we're just now working on what our solution will be to this so that we can give people an alternative, because we do think it's important that we come up with the alternative and make sure that people know what's going on. So we're going to beat up on C-121 in our committee, and so is education and local government and all of those committees. But we're also going to be publicizing our work on finding that alternative, and then trying to work with the governor's office to try to find the money to fund support for that.
Okay. So I would just throw in one other last thing about taxation is it is a massively huge, complex issue, but it has a very simple solution. Treat everybody fairly, and the people who make the most should be paying the most.
Yeah.
So,
hey, Kevin, we never gave you a chance to tell us what the PSC is and why you are running for the PSC. And then you're a really, really smart, dedicated person. And you would do a great job.
It's funny because since I moved back to Montana, so I grew up here, but I moved away in 1994 from Bozeman, where I was going to school. But I did grow up in Helena, and when I moved away, I was sure I was never coming back to Montana because I was like, I don't like the place. Well, what I didn't like was being queer in a place that didn't understand queers. When I moved back, I have been loud, very much who I am. I'm subtle, as you can tell by the shirt. And I've been fighting to change it. And so I've been around and adjacent to politics the entire time. And now it's time to get involved with some of the things where I can take the skills that I have from all of the different jobs that I've had from all over the country that I've lived and put them to use for Montanans. The Public Service Commission is supposed to be working for Montanans to protect them from the profiteering that can happen when you have a monopoly in place and you must do business with that monopoly. So if you are a resident of a town that is served by Northwestern Energy, without the PSC, Northwestern say, you're going to pay us every single dime. And you'd have no recourse because that's the only way you get your energy. The PSC is to stop that. And it's not to drive Northwestern Energy into the ground. There are a bunch of people who think, ooh, you're just going to bury Northwestern. I'm not. That's not the goal. The goal is both sides can be treated fairly. And I know a lot of the Republicans out there don't understand that. But I would point out, as my mother and as Linda Voy both pointed out, Republicans don't even let Republicans set their utility rates. Because you fundamentally have to understand that a regulation isn't the devil in order to put a regulation in that actually does some good.
Yeah.
So, and the entire job of the PSC is regulating. It is public service regulation. That is literally what it does. So my background is working in a whole bunch of different regulated industries, from taxation, when at a tax software company, to aviation, to hospitality, which has interesting sort of rules in place on how everything it does can be done, to working in telecom and the internet. And it's funny because I got asked by somebody that I had sent an email out to, they were all, oh, well, you have a conflict of interest because you own an internet company. And I'm like, I don't, because the Republicans are so against regulation and so tied up with telcos that they've managed to keep internet, the functional foundation of our economy, that is literally held by monopolies worldwide, out of regulation by monopoly regulators. It's very bizarre. So I don't have any conflict of interest. I do, however, have a dedicated interest in making sure that people get good internet, because even before the pandemic, my company has been fighting to get people internet that is open and free, that is accessible and powerful and does the things that everybody needs in their house, because we're nerds. My business partners and I, they're nerdy, nerd. There's nobody nerdier. Like if you go to any sort of social network, we've got accounts on there from the beginning of time, in whatever name we thought we needed, because we're nerds. We're nerds. And we know exactly what the internet can do. And putting together a chance to say, hey, the internet can be all these things for people of Montana. There should be no opportunity that's afforded to any American that is not afforded to every single Montanan. Whether you're in Shelby or Ekalaka or the middle of nowhere, 12 miles outside of Troy, you should be able to get internet to your home. This is not that hard. We did it 100 years ago with electricity, which is much harder, because I don't know if you know this, but internet, if you put it against your finger, doesn't do anything. But electricity, if you put that against your finger, you light up. It's a little more dangerous. And we did it 100 years ago, like putting fiber in the ground. We know how to dig trenches. We know how to do all this stuff. We haven't done it because we're like, oh, it's too expensive. You know what's too expensive? The lost opportunities that happen because we have some genius who's living in the middle of nowhere and doesn't have access to the internet and doesn't know they're a genius yet. And that's the thing. How many of these people that just didn't have access and didn't have the opportunities have we lost? How far behind are we because of how much we've cut people off from basic access to what we consider an absolute need? And now after the pandemic, it's so much clearer how much we need this. So that's why I'm running, because I honestly believe that the PSC is a force for good if it is run well. Unfortunately, it is currently run into the ground. So we need people that are going to be able to do the right thing, but we also need somebody who's a little bit more dynamic and can be the showman that unfortunately the Republicans are expecting, because that's what resonates with them. They need somebody who's going to give them the story and give it to them in a show, and I'm that person. So that's where it is. We've gotten a couple of other questions because I want to back up. One of them came from Twitter, and I'm going to put it up really quick. That's Linda.
This is so cool. Thank you all for,
Isn't it?
joining us in social media land.
So this is from Tim Warburton, at Montana Tim 406. There's a lot of Montana in that name. Like, if there were any way to do the state outline in your name, Tim, that would be the awesome thing. So we can talk until we're blue in the face about all the terrible things the GOP legislators have passed and will try to pass. But people keep not voting for people with a D behind their name. Why? Well, one of the reasons is we've been demonized in the press, and we haven't had a lot of people, and again, I'm going to push back that we need more people like me that are willing to stand up and be unabashedly clever and fun and entertaining and still be Democrats. What you have, as much as I hate Trump, and I really do, he is an entertainer. and he connected with people on the entertainment side. That was his first win. His second win is he's authentic. He's an authentic POS, but he's authentic. And that wins with Montanans. And I know so many legislators. I know so many people in politics because I'm in Montana. I'm in Helena. I mean, literally, I used to go to the gym and I'd be right there with a Supreme Court justice on one side, the governor on the other, as they were running. I don't run. I'm just walking. Fat, get over it. But they're there at the gym with me. So being around all these politicians is normal for us. But we don't have, like, I'm one of those people who will go up and talk to them, but very few other Montanans will. And so we need more outgoing personalities to be involved. And what's fun is, and I've been watching this in the two of you, and Marianne, you talked about this a little earlier before we went live, how much you love going on the doors and how much you love talking to people. And Jill, I've watched as you become a leader in going to leadership and how much, how glorious it is to watch you as you've become this person who literally at the drop of a hat, there's 600 people around me, I'm going to talk about what we need to talk about. And you don't have any of those qualms that you had 8, 10, 12 years ago. And we need more of that. Kim Abbott has done that as well. We just need more and more and more, because that's what it's going to come down to, is that they have to feel they can meet us. That's why we're doing this forum tonight. Not because I think it's great that people need to have a chat with me, but because it's a chance for us to get out and talk to more people. And it's important. I'll let you guys answer now too.
Well, and so Tim, I would say too that we need more people talking about the things that are important to them and pointing out the fact that Democrats are the ones that actually support those things. Because we don't have a lot of that kind of support system that we used to, with people thinking that Democrats are out to support them. And so that's my biggest hope, is to keep talking like this and hit those corners of Montana where people can see that's like the real people talking about the real stuff in my community, not this esoteric craziness that happens during the session. Because we take these values that we're talking to you about tonight to the session. And when people don't take those values to the session, you get a session like you just saw, which is taking away people's freedoms, and they're taking away their ability to be successful in their local communities. And they don't have housing, and they don't have childcare, and they don't have health care, and their caregivers are not supported. And, you know, we could go on and on and on about the things that were attacked during this session that we fought and fought and fought against. But it's going to take neighbors talking to neighbors and saying, that person didn't support us. Did you pay attention to what they actually did? And show that there are people that fought for you. There are people that cared about what you care about. And we're going to keep voicing that as much as we possibly can, and trying to get the word out to regular Montanans that the folks that were up there didn't support them, but there are people that do. And you better find them, and you better educate yourself about who you're voting for, and know who is going to fight for you up there.
Yeah.
Marianne, you want to take a go?
Yeah, you covered it. You covered it really well, both of you. I've lived in Montana 20 years now. I mean, my late husband was born and raised here, and family, some of his family is still here. A lot of them are underneath the ground, but, Montanans, it used to be, we didn't look at labels or identity or tribes. And I really believe that Montanans who, are busy working, maybe 2 jobs to feed their families, keep a roof over their heads, keep the car running, or trying to, ranch and farm, in the face of a lot of adversarial stuff. I really think that hopefully last session was a wake-up call to them, that maybe they shouldn't have voted straight Republican, because, did I really vote for this taking away voter rights? Did I really vote for taking away a woman's right to make her own healthcare decisions, which most of Montana agrees we should have that privacy right, and our Constitution guarantees it. I mean, and on and on and on. Did I really vote for local governments to have their hands tied on just about everything. I mean, did I really vote for like you know, I don't care if somebody's trans. Did I vote to punish them? No, I didn't. I just voted for an R, and I didn't know. I mean, I really, really in my heart believe that people will come around and see, oops, you know, straight R is really not the way to go. So call me a Pollyanna or an optimist, but we have to have hope.
Otherwise, we wouldn't pick up our sword every day and go back to work and go fight for this. Kev, there are so many questions for you. You need to get
it. Let me drop this one up.
Where
this one's from Linda Beischel again. What happens when a regulated monopoly threatens to take their marbles and go home? That seems to be the subtext for Northwestern and others when they suggest they need higher rates or they will exit the market. It's real simple. We convene the legislature and we take back the dams and our ownership of the parts of Colstrip that we want, and we ban them from doing business in the state, and we reconstitute Montana Power. So if they want to play that hardball, we already know what works because we had it before 1997. We're perfectly happy putting that back in place. I know every Montanan's pocketbook would be perfectly happy with undoing the deregulation that happened under Governor Mark Roscoe.
Amen.
And even here's the thing. I've known Mark Roscoe since I was 12, 10, something like that. It's been a long time. And even he admits that it was the wrong thing to do. So if they're going to try to play hardball that way, we just need to turn around and make it Montana assets. Because at the end of the day, we should own the dams. They're on our rivers. They're on our public right-of-way. We should own them. We should take care of them. We should have responsibility for them. Because at the end of the day, we're going to be responsible for everything that goes in and out of it anyway. So let's have full ownership of it. Let's make sure those things happen, and let's make sure that the energy produced by them goes to Montanans first, and any excess is the only thing that we pay for. The other thing that we could be doing, I don't know if you've been to East Helena, but we have a giant slag heap out there. 5 of the top minerals in there are used to make batteries. And instead of building a battery plant in Montana to make batteries, which can, last time I checked, store electricity, we're shipping that slag heap to South Korea, and they're separating the elements, and they're doing this thing. What's it called? Oh yeah, making batteries. Like, there's lots we could be doing. So I think that their subtext is put in place to give cover to the current commissioners of the PSC. They're like, oh, we can't do that. We have to do that. But they've done the same thing with passing on the rates with passing on the costs for all of the rates, the gas rates for this winter, when they said it's going to cost between 47 and 67% more for the customers of gas. That's ridiculous. They should have been buying on futures. They should have been storing gas. They have gas storage facilities that we approved that they build, and we gave them extra money in our payments to do so, and they're not using them to save us money. That's irresponsible management on behalf of Northwestern Energy. That has nothing to do with us. So there's lots that we could do to make those things better. Mark Runkle asked, this is great. Do you know yet how the charge per light is calculated for city lighting districts by Northwestern Energy? I believe that they gather up a calculator, a 6-year-old child, and a gnome, and put them under a tree with a bag of gold and possibly some fermented strawberry juice, and let them come up with numbers, because that's the only way any of it makes sense. So no, I don't actually know how that's calculated. My understanding is it's got some calculations that go in based on whether they have to replace the light this year, next year, whether they're replacing it with a colored LED or the bright white LEDs, which they should be doing the sodium colored LEDs to keep it so that people aren't going blind at night. There's a lot that's going on with this. Basically, Northwestern Energy is kind of leading the troops on this. I know that Great Falls is working on a draft analysis on how they're going to be dealing with it. I think every city should be talking about how to deal with this, because the lighting districts are one of those things where it's like, yes, we need to have these lights and they shouldn't cost that much. And quite frankly, LEDs are very efficient. So it shouldn't cost that much once they're replaced, and that savings should be passed on to the cities and towns. So hopefully it will become a public thing. It's one of the things that I will definitely ask for as a commissioner, because it's something that should be public because it affects everyone.
Right.
So Josh has that question about Bitcoin mining, and I will just let you know that is an energy sucker.
Yeah, it is.
Big time energy sucker. I understand what you're saying about subsidizing and getting a new energy generation, whether that's solar or whatever. It's going to be a huge, but you put that in place and it's going to suck it all away because it is a lot of energy that is necessary to do that. I didn't support it, but there are tax breaks out there to bring those data mining companies into Montana. We just didn't see them. They ended up going to other states. And so until we have the ability to kind of have somebody like Kev that is going to be on the PSC and defending our Montana energy, it's going to be difficult for these companies to be able to come in here, because what we want to do is increase our ability to have different kinds of energy that can be available to everybody, because what that does is reduce the cost for everyone. And so my hope is that we can continue to have our state put some money behind the solar farms. That's what we're actually seeing come in, which is fantastic, because we're starting to do the transition that we all know we need to do. So if Kev's got something more to say, I think we got to have somebody in there that knows.
Somebody's got a clue in Northwestern that, hey, renewable energy is the way to go right now. They are clinging to coal strip and clinging to fossil fuels. And Kev, I'd like to know your opinion on the natural gas plant that Northwestern plans to build. Probably still figure out a way to get ratepayers to pay for it, even though they didn't get the permission from the PSC to pass the cost on. I know Northwestern likes to own stuff because their shareholders get a 7.5% return on investment for all the facilities they own, but they can just as easily build renewable energy things, turbine farms, solar farms. So yeah, wonder what your thoughts are on that.
Well, there are a couple of things. One of the things that I find, like Bitcoin mining in and of itself, I'm not a huge fan of, and I will tell you that, Josh, mostly because in most instances, it is put together in a way that simply consumes electricity and doesn't really give back to the ratepayers in any way. So I'm not terribly interested in it from that perspective. Now, if you were to do something where you had a wind farm, and this is one of those interesting discussions that has come up because one of my constituents was talking about when they lived in Michigan, there's a lot of wind farms there and they tend to not be in service. Like there's plenty of wind, the windmills just aren't turning. And I went and checked out why. And the reason why is because they have their base load met and they're peaking too high. So they're putting too much energy into the grid and they don't have any place for it to go. Okay. That's where you put a Bitcoin mining center. So you keep those windmills going all the time. And when the electricity is needed for something else, you pull it back from Bitcoin mining and run it in so that the electricity costs stay label. And then the excess is pushed back to Bitcoin mining. That would be a fantastic use of it. There are other problems with Bitcoin mining and with cryptocurrency in general that I have, mostly that it's used for a lot of dark and skeevy things. And those need to be solved as well, but that wasn't part of your question. But there are ways to make it so that clean energy is used in a responsible way that allows for this to happen. But again, batteries first, and then excess can be used for Bitcoin mining. Because I would love nothing better than everybody in Great Falls to have, I don't know if you've seen the new tulip turbines, but they're basically vertical turbines. They're really quite pretty. Germany has put them along the Autobahn. And they just spin all the time. Everybody in Great Falls should have one at their house because Great Falls would just generate electricity for the rest of the state. And like Black Eagle would have like 3 Bitcoin mining centers, and they'd all be rich. That's all there is to it. It would be awesome. So, so that is one of the things that's there. Josh is disagreeing with me. Josh, we'll go have beer sometime, and you can tell me what I'm wrong on, and on that, because I have every confidence that I don't know everything, and I'm perfectly willing to learn more. So that's where that is. I did have one other question from online, and that would be a really easy one. I'm going to throw this up, and Marianne, you can take this.
Where?
Does the Democratic Party support the legalization of cannabis?
Well, we already did.
That's why it was an easy
But yeah.
question.
Yeah. I wonder if the person asking the question knows.
I think they want to know on a national level if we support it, and I believe we do.
Oh, yeah, sure. Why not? I also support the what is it? If you've got a rap against you for a marijuana infraction, that it's what's the word? Expungement.
Yes.
Expungement. Yeah. And there's tons of revenue we can make off legalization of cannabis. I mean, we're seeing the revenue come into Montana already. And with that, as far as medical marijuana goes, which, there is a reason to have medical marijuana because the dosing is more precise and purity and things like that. We need to drop the tax on medical marijuana. Medical marijuana is the only medicine that I know of that's taxed at all. Pharmaceuticals are not taxed, and God knows the opioids are not taxed. So
there's a tax on opioids. It's just not money.
It's just a what?
It's just not money.
Oh, we're all paying for it though.
All
Yeah,
paying
we're all
for
paying
it.
for
That's
that.
The Sacklers.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. So let's see. I have one other that's. Let's see. I'm checking.
Let's see.
So Tim said, "Laugh It Up" as one of the Dem candidates in the East is against it. Okay, Tim, I'd like to know who that candidate is because I'll have a long chat with him on how it's improved pretty much everything and all of the stuff that people have been upset about, like with cannabis. They're like, "Oh, it's going to cause people to be high and try to fly off of buildings, or they're gonna do things and be weird near kids." I'm like, no, none of that stuff has happened. Like, none of the things that they said that were going to come about. What has happened is it's no longer a thing that people get charged for. Resources are now used in better ways when it comes to policing and protection and health. And more people are finding that this is the thing they want, and that we are seeing drops in DUIs. We're seeing smarter uses of everything around. So whoever it is that's out there that thinks that, it's still the devil's lettuce, I'll have a nice chat with them because they're wrong. It's that simple.
Well, and so I think, Kev, back in the day when you say kids, when kids in high school and stuff, that you tell them you can't have it, it's bad for you, they're going to say, "Ooh, I want that." And I think you just go to the next level. And I do think that it can be a bit of a gateway drug, but once we legalized it, it's like, I just don't think it's a thing anymore. And I think that we're going to see less of the addiction that then travels into the next level, right?
Yeah.
And like you said, I think the police will focus on the places of not letting the drugs come in from Canada and not letting them, come in from these foreign countries and be made here in Montana either. And, I'd rather have them focused on that than,
Right. And then, there's so many better things that they could be doing with their time.
Yes.
And what we need to make sure is, we have to watch this fentanyl coming into Montana, and we need to have good regulations on the purity of our cannabis in Montana. And we have that in our law and sideboards and all those kinds of things, because we don't want it laced with fentanyl or anything else that it shouldn't be laced with. So yeah, just like we regulate alcohol, we are regulating cannabis. And frankly, in the long run, will probably be a better thing for our society because we have some regulations, whereas before it was illegal and not regulated.
Well, and just remember, one of the big reasons that cannabis was ever made illegal was because it's a crop, hemp is a crop, that competes with another crop, cotton, that had a lot more money behind it at the time. And so they could say, hey, we're going to make this illegal and get rid of one of our main competitions so that we can have all the money. It comes down to greed many, many times with all of this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So getting hemp production back in, getting the legalization of weed is just a smart thing to do. The other thing is, think about this. It takes a 1 acre area of hemp growth, makes as much paper in a year as 10 acres of trees do in 10 years. And hemp can be grown on that same land the next year.
Over and over. Yeah.
Like, again, it's this whole thing about we have made systems so that people can make money instead of being smart about how we can do things called living. And we need to fix those. And it takes people who care and are actually going to stand up to money and say, no, we're not going to do things that way. So Sean White Wolf put in, cannabis just stinks. It does. I hate the smell too. I'm like, why? I was leaving my office and I went to the garage and I walked through the little vestibule to get into the parking garage, and somebody had smoked a joint in there. I swear to God, like literally instance before that, I was like, oh, that is some really good weed and I smell like it now. It's the worst. I really wish everybody just had brownies because, look at me. I love a brownie. I love a brownie. Which, isn't it Girl Scout?
So here's some cool information. You remember the newspapers all came out and they were talking about how much tax revenue came in that first, month of the marijuana sales. It was very hilarious because it has dropped off a cliff. I mean, I think everybody went crazy and said, oh, I remember this from high school. I need to go try some. And now everybody bought theirs and now it's at their house and they're going.
Well, because it's like, here's the thing. I will show you behind me. I've got a stash of liquor. But it's the same stash of liquor that I've had for all year. I want to have a good drink when I want to have a good drink, but I don't drink all the time. I'm an adult. It's not that hard to do those sorts of things. So, I hope it is a good revenue generator for the state, and I hope it stops people from going to jail who felt like they needed a high or it helped them in some other way medically. I think that's great. There's only 2 reasons anybody ever does drugs. It's to medicate or to celebrate. And you can do both with this, and that's awesome. I prefer a whiskey, and that's fine. And it doesn't matter which one you do. Don't drive afterwards. It's pretty basic.
Yeah.
So, do we have any more questions from anybody other than Linda asking Marianne?
The smell of a dispensary.
But the smell of a dispensary.
You want to hear the story?
Yes.
Okay, so Linda was kind enough to, Linda, I don't know if we were knocking doors. Oh, Jill, we were knocking doors for you, and I think, and Kathleen Williams, I think too. Linda, type in there if I'm wrong about that, but it was something. And so Linda and I had our walk lists. That's the list of the folks you want to knock doors on, people. And so we're way out. So we had to drive between houses. So we have this address and we pull up and it looks like it's a dispensary, and they have a greenhouse and the works. I mean, and so Linda says, this is a pot place. I'm like, well, it's on our list. Maybe the people live here. So I walk in and talk to them, and I think they voted for you, Jill. And I come out and Linda goes, oh my gosh, you smell like a dispensary. Yeah, that was a dispensary in there. And fortunately, it was like, she said, you reek. And like, yeah, I'm going to go home, and my husband's going to say, my late husband said, you sure you're knocking doors? But anyway, fortunately, that was one of the last places on our list, so we didn't have to knock any more doors after that. And, paint a bad picture about you, Jill. So, yeah.
We've got another one from Sean. Inflation is going sky high. It's forcing hard times on low income. Is state DPHHS going to raise their limits to qualify for services?
So I would just be super surprised if DPHHS does anything. They are Because they're having a hell of a time keeping workers. They are having a hell of a time keeping the services even the way they were at the level that they were. I'm very, very afraid of just how the services are being provided from the department. I've got some folks, and Marianne, I got to turn somebody over to you because everybody knows I work in DPHHS, so I have to be very careful about my legislative work, which is part of the reason I keep my distance from the department. But I'm watching the folks in that department having to do 3 and 4 jobs just to try to keep services going to Montanans, and it is depressing. It's scary. I'm afraid for rural Montana because if you don't live in one of these bigger towns that's got a DPHHS office, I'm really afraid of what's going to happen for the long term. I don't see them doing anything that they don't have to do. So unless the federal government makes a change, I don't think you're going to see them make a change on behalf of Montanans. They've never shown that they are willing to do that. They've never, I've just never seen it happen. Unless they're forced to do it, they're not going to do it. And they're more likely to not take the money from the federal government than make some of the changes they need to make to actually make these services work well.
Yeah. What they need to do, there's so many things they need to do, but what they need to do is make sure that staffers in community-based services are paid well, paid a living wage. These are the people who care for the folks we can't care for our aging community, our people with disabilities, people with mental health challenges, and they're, our children. I talked to one gentleman on the door, and he works for a child care facility, Montessori, and earns $18,000 a year, and he's got a master's degree in early childhood development. For one thing, you can't live on $18,000 a year. You sure can't buy a house or even rent an apartment anymore. So DPHHS needs to look at the rate structure for what they pay their contractors, so their contractors can pay their direct care providers more. DPHHS also needs to look at, I had a bill for doing away with the benefits cliff, and what that is that if somebody is does depend on Medicaid for their health care and some other TANF and some other public assistance, that if they get $1 raise, which puts them over the limit to get public assistance, that they're not immediately kicked off of it, because I've talked to several people on the doors who they've turned down promotions so they didn't get that $1 or $2 raise because of this benefits cliff. Other states approach it very, very smartly. They ease down the benefits just as you're getting used to being paid that extra $1 or $2, and maybe you're getting health insurance now through your worker or something, so it's not an abrupt cliff that you fall off of. But as far as raising the limits, they don't even raise the limit because of our 7.5% inflation for their own staffers. I can't tell you how many state employees have talked to me about, we really need, our salaries are not keeping up with inflation. And I know city government employees have gotten a cost of living inflation increase, and I'm not sure about the county public employees, but I know state employees have not. And they're going to get a 50-cent raise in November, but that doesn't cut it. It certainly doesn't. So yeah, a lot to look at. Inflation is really something that the Fed needs to take care of, but there are all these extreme circumstances that the state can deal with. Gosh knows we have a bucket of money coming in. We have the marijuana revenue, we have ARPA funds, we have infrastructure money. we need to do some things that help the working class in Montana.
We also had $377 million clawed back by the feds because the governor didn't distribute it. So, it's one of those things where we elected these people, and I'm not, abdicating myself because I voted, but, my vote went for the other team, and the people that we elected in, these are what they're doing. And so we're all suffering the consequences of the votes that were made. I hope that more people understand the consequences that they've created, because this is exactly what it is. And while Linda, I love what you put here, that handpicked from Kentucky by a Republican governor. I don't care who you pick, but you don't pick somebody who took the Kentucky public health system from 42nd to 48th in the 2 years that he was there. That's ridiculous. That's not a successful run. So,
no. Well, and so we're kind of back where we were before. It really matters who you vote for, and you should look for people who are actually care about your values, care about your community, or standing forward on the issues that you think are important. I mean, we aren't seeing a governor who is getting this money out on the ground, and he has not one time has he given raises to current employees since we got the ARPA funds. It is allowed to be able to give raises to current employees to keep them in their jobs. He will pay 10 times the wages at Warm Springs for those traveling nurses, and he's not giving one thin dime to those permanent state employees that are working there. That is unconscionable.
Yeah.
And those people if you were there, why wouldn't you quit, go to work for the traveling place, and then come back right back to your office the next day? I mean, I don't even
that's been happening. I have several friends that are nurses that did exactly that.
Yep.
They went to work for the travel nursing and immediately got assigned to the hospital in their hometown.
Yep.
10 and they're
times,
making twice as much.
4 to 10 times. Yep.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
There is one other thing that I wanted to pass off to you to answer, and this would be about the op-ed that was in the Missoulian today from the 5 youngest lawmakers in the Montana legislature, or as I like to call them, children. They were complaining about how the regulations are what's standing in the way of homeownership. Would y'all like to talk to that?
Okay. How about the cost? That might be a big deal right now. The fact that in the last legislature, the only bill that would have actually helped put increased amount of housing, which we have a lack of housing, that's why housing is expensive, on the ground, the governor vetoed it. I mean, he didn't support it. We couldn't get it passed. I mean, why would he do such a thing? It was the only bill, and it would have actually put the tax incentives necessary to get some folks building new affordable housing projects in the state. And
yeah, he said his reasoning was, well, we have ARPA money coming in that will do that. Okay, where did you distribute it?
Exactly.
You didn't.
Yeah, it's always a sleight of hand.
Yeah. The one part that I wanted to put in there is that they had this whole letter, all 5 of them. And to be clear, it's Braxton Mitchell, Mallory Stromswald, Casey Knutson, Caleb Hinkle, and Katie Zolnikoff. And of the, I know Katie, I like her. She's a delightful person. But they didn't talk about any specific regulation. Never mentioned one. They mentioned a study done by a right-wing think tank that wants to have unrestricted construction happen. And unrestricted construction is what happened in Houston. And if you'd like to see what it's like to live in a swamp that has unrestricted construction happening in it, go live there. It's terrible. I lived there for 2 years. Never again. Never again.
Yeah.
And the traffic is awful. The housing is awful. It's just as expensive there to live as here. And you're living in a swamp. You're down below sea level. And they get hurricanes. I don't know if you know this, but a hurricane brings in water. And if you're below sea level, you get covered in water.
Yeah.
But they don't have any restrictions on how you could build there. Imagine what they would do up in the Flathead if all of a sudden you could build anything you'd want. You'd have $1 million mansion right there on the lake. And, pardon my French, but a shithole right next to it.
And decks could be collapsing. Yeah. Decks are collapsing because we don't have regulations on current structures that maybe are so old and need to be refurbished, but they're not, and they're still being used, and the decks are collapsing and killing people. And
here's, yeah. And it's really weird. The other thing is they took away one of the ordinances in Missoula that they were trying to increase the amount of housing that was available to people there. And they actually passed a bill that took away their ability, their town's ability to vote, to be able to have these mother-in-law things in out back of their homes, and they won't allow it now.
yeah.
So here you go. Basically, I'm going to let you have all of the freedom you want, but only if it's the freedom that I think you should have.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, Helena still has those accessory dwelling units, and I maybe they were grandfathered in. They also took away ability to do inclusionary zoning, which is to make sure there's affordable housing when you do a development. You can build your big homes, big mansions, but make sure you have affordable housing in there too, for a balance. And they took that ability away. And Bozeman was in the process of implementing it, and so was Whitefish. And so they were cut off at the knees. So that's what I mean about taking away the abilities of local governments to govern their communies as they
right. And local governments need to be able to do things like rein in Airbnb and VRBO. Because I'm sorry, the fact that people are buying up all of these places and turning them into short-term rentals, yes, that's great that you're making a bunch of money, but you are destroying our communities by doing it. So it needs to stop. Is it fair what you're doing? No. Is it fair that we're going to take away a revenue source from you? Actually, yeah, it is, because we're going to make sure that our community can function. That way, our community doesn't fail, and you don't end up with a dilapidated place of nothing because everybody moved away. Which is exactly what you're driving us to.
Yeah, the reason we have regulations is so we don't build on a place that has no access to water, and you know, I mean, we're seeing that even in our valley, the Helena Valley, and with the North Star development, and that's something the PSC has been dealing with.
And what a nightmare!
They're ripping off the residents the well they drilled. I mean, there's not enough water there, yet they put up more housing units that the water has the capacity to serve. What a nightmare! And so we need the reason we have regulations is to keep the bad actors in line.
Right. So it's now been an hour, which
oh my
gosh,
gosh,
really fast.
Time flies.
I'm super excited about this, but I think that we should do it again.
Yes.
Because this is a great thing. The video is going to remain up on all of the socials that it's attached to, so people can see it at any time, which is a great thing. We hope you had a good time. Jill and Marianne, thank you for joining me. I think it was actually probably the best use of an hour on a Monday ever. Certainly better than the Zoom meetings I was in today.
Agreed.
Thank you. Thank you for setting this up. You used your techie savvy to figure this out and get all the social media channels connected. It's brilliant. And it's wonderful. Thank you, Kev, very much.
Thank you, Sean. Thanks for participating. And Linda and Mark.
Yeah, and thanks for everyone who showed up.
And Josh.
We're probably going to do another one fairly soon. I'm hoping to have Kim Abbott and a couple other people. I don't know that I will be on it, but I will probably help with the technical side of it just to make sure that all of that is working. But I think this was super fun, and I want to do more of these. So even if nobody else joins us, I'd like to do more because I think this was a great time. Anybody out there in the audience, if you see this live or if you see this later on recorded and you have questions, you're more than welcome to reach out to any of us via the Facebook, the Twitters, the emails, our websites, whatever it is that you need to do to get a hold of us. The whole point in representing the people of Montana is that we're accessible to the people of Montana, and you can get a hold of us, and we can tell you what we think, and you can tell us what you think, and hopefully that means that we can make things better. So join us with that. That's what we're trying to do.
Yeah, thank you. And we're all running for election, so please vote for us.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And donate. Jill, where can people find you most easily?
I have no idea, Kev, because I got to fix my ActBlue account still.
Okay. So, well, you can find all of us on our Facebook pages. That's probably the easiest. I do have a website at kevinham.com. Marianne has a website at mariannedunwell.com. And Jill Cohenour could have a website if she called me and we set it up.
Yeah, yeah.
We also
I
have
have a
Twitter.
website because Kev did my website. So
Oh,
that's why I have
That's
a
how-
website. And
that's
that's
how
why
I
he
knew it was
knows
there.
the URL.
And it took like, it doesn't take that long anymore to do a website and get it up and in place and tied into your ActBlue. We all have ActBlue accounts. Please consider donating to us, because the only way we do get to change the world is if we actually get elected. And we appreciate every single one of you that showed up tonight. So
and if you write a check, you're writing a check for your values.
it's true. You're investing in the future you want to see.
Well,
All right.
saving our democracy and our Montana Constitution, I mean, things are dire. So,
Yeah.
We're all in this together.
I do like the fact that our Constitution is 50 years old and I'm 49 years old, so I'm just a year away from being a socialist rag.
Love you, Kevin.
Anyway, I think
On
that's
that
great.
note.
I say we call it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.